So as Lalit mentioned, I lead our global emerging technology ecosystem. We partner with great organizations, companies like ASAPP. Today I'm with Dan. So it is a team sport, and Dan is pitching in for his boss, who likes aviation, but he's late. So unfortunately, Gustavo is still in the air. His flight was delayed, but Dan has graciously agreed to step in. So we'll talk for the next 20 minutes or so about our experiences working together. You're a terrific company. It's been great working with you guys. But before we get into that, maybe Dan, introduce yourself and talk a little bit about ASAPP, and we'll get into some specifics.
Yeah, so nice to be with you all. ASAPP is a generative AI company. We've been around for about 10 years. Started very much as a research company in really tackling the area of customer experience. So any of the technologies related to customer service, how agents are interacting with customers, how you engage with your customers. Personally, I've been in the CX space for about 11 years. It sounds very quaint to say, but I was with a company that was the first to go into multi-tenanted cloud solutions, which is ubiquitous now, but back then it was very new. So being around this space has been really interesting to see the innovation and opportunity and the challenges that are happening within the CX space right now in terms of cost and how to serve customers in a new and more productive way.
Yeah. So I think you guys, the way you set up the business need for what you decided to focus on 10 years ago is really well done. Gustavo tells that story really well. The need continues to be there. It's an area that everybody in this room has had experiences with call centers. And we may even know some of the people who work in the call centers. And it's one of those areas where it's generally sub-optimized.
Yeah.
Thus the focus on that area that you've made. So 10 years on, Gen AI showed up a year and a half ago. You've embedded that into your product. Talk a little bit about how it's changed now versus when we started 10 years ago.
Yeah, so like many startups, and many of you would have these similar stories, it started with our CEO having a painful interaction with an enterprise. And so ASAPP started on this journey to figure out, could we provide better tools to the agents? And so we started looking and deploying to really large enterprises the ability to create automation in terms of what is the accuracy, can we create messaging for the agent to bring better accuracy to the customer? Can we do better transcription, better summary services, all these tools that agents use? And we got really good at it. We were pretty off the radar. We focused on very high-end enterprises, really complex organizations. And then over the last few years, where AI versus the promise of AI have really started to come together, obviously. And so our focus has pivoted for this really massive opportunity, which is how do you take a number of interactions that happen inside of customer service. Like most of the interactions that happen within customer service are the same 15, 20 interactions. And what happens if we can just completely automate those? And what I always like to say is, the ultimate goal of customer service is to abbreviate customer pain. If we can abbreviate the customer's pain by having a very quick in, quick out, without having to necessarily talk to a human at all, it's great for your brand to be able to engage with customers in that way, and it's great for just the experience and the operation inside the contact center. So
we've worked together. I think it's an excellent partnership, as I mentioned earlier. Our task in EY, firms like ours, is the way I think about it is that we help people to change. There's a lot that goes into that, but that's what we do fundamentally. And what you do, a lot of that powers change. And so what have been the benefits to organizations today, having included all the different types of AI that you have, right, including Gen AI, like your Gen Agent, for example, which is a terrific product. Talk a little bit about what companies are getting out of this.
Yeah, so the best way to talk about it is for us to think about the problem. And the problem for many years has been, and I was on this journey with cloud. In my naivete, I thought, okay, if we can migrate to cloud, provide a better user experience for the agents and the supervisors in the business, it's going to create a better environment for service to take place. And what's been challenging, and I think many of you can attest to this, that there's real labor issues that are going on in the contact center. There's been a lot of effort to have more flexibility, work from home, increase wages, bring in what we call WFM tools. So how do we do motivation, gamification, coaching, to try to make the role of the agent more livable, right? And yet, we are still seeing a massive flood of agents who don't stay in the role. It's very costly to the business, and it hurts the customer experience. So what we've seen is that with our customers, starting with the innovation in terms of giving agents tools that they can much more quickly adapt to the customer, to automate the tasks was a step. And now what we're very excited about, and I'm not here to do a product pitch for it, but it's really relevant for us, is the promise to be able to finally offload a lot of those interactions, because ultimately the customer, we all agree, the customer doesn't really want to talk to us most of the time. Sometimes they do, and it's awesome. But we're seeing that we can start to evolve the agent role to be in less menial tasks and more complex, more meaningful tasks, while we offload a lot of that finally to automation in a way that's not just merely a chatbot, but one where I can have a natural conversation like you and I are having, and for it to be able to find the intent, answer the question, and take action while humans are in the loop behind. So it's new, right? We just released this product about 4 or 5 months ago, and just the early signs of what's happening, it's really making us reimagine what is possible and our customers reimagine, because we've been thinking about this for a long time, and now it's happening. It's scary and super exciting. It's super exciting what's happening right now.
I mean, it's really, I just want to emphasize the point about the improved employee experience of the people who work in these customer service centers. I think that's a huge win. You've always done a good job there, but I think with this latest iteration of the product, being able to do so much more in natural language makes the life of the agent that much better, so they can do those things that are more fulfilling, integrate the service center more with the product organization, for example. So I think it's a big win for the organization overall. I think that goes well beyond the efficiencies that people generally think about.
Because you see contact centers that are very, very meaningful in terms of the roles. When you're able, a lot of agents play the role of a robot, in the sense that the reason it's a hard job is because it doesn't have a lot of decision making. You're dealing in high emotional environments with customers. And so the idea that we are able to really focus on those key areas where the human interaction does have a big brand benefit to the customer and to your organization is something we take really seriously. And part of the way you do that is by taking away the things that none of us would want to do if we didn't have to. And that's a great promise, I think.
So let's talk a little bit about adoption. So I mean, and everybody in the audience, your companies, many of you would have organizations that deal with customers, call centers, what have you. We've worked together, visited with clients. In some cases, people latch on to it very quickly, go, let's do it. In others, it takes them a little bit longer. What's been your experience in terms of best practice around helping people, organizations to adopt?
Yeah, it's a really good question, because if you come in, especially in our sector around the customer service space, if you go in and say, hey, we could automate 50% of the interactions that you currently have going to agents, that sounds great, and there's very much a truth to it. But to your point, the precursors, and a lot of the things our customers are asking is, we might be 2 years away from that. We might be 3 years, we might be 1 year away. So what we're developing, and EY has been a great partner in this, is we're developing that maturity model. Example, we spent a lot of time dealing with technologies that aren't the sexiest thing in the world, like transcription. That's not a thing you lead an event with. But if you have a transcription service like ASAPP, where you're getting to 94% accuracy, that's a precursor, because if you don't have good transcription, then your generative agent can't be listening, understanding, responding, and taking action. So there are these precursors. So what we're telling our customers, and some of them are very aggressive, and some are saying, we have knowledge management issues. So for an AI to be able to go into your internal APIs, of which maybe they don't even exist. So you have knowledge management on the back end, and then you have your telephony services and all of these sometimes very antiquated technologies. So what we're doing is helping companies go, hey, all these precursor technologies that we built give you a roadmap that if you're 3 years out, awesome. Let's start looking at the maturity map of what you need with transcription and summarization and integration to back-end systems, because you might find you're a big mess on the back end in terms of knowledge. So a lot of it is in mapping out with the customer, what's your appetite and what is the maturity model, how antiquated might you be and how much work goes in that before we just usher in and go, look at generative agent. We have to really be deliberate, especially the larger the enterprise.
I think that's well said. I mean, the organizations are big and they have a life of their own. And we're all people that work in them. We've developed our teams and our way of working, and we all want to feel like we have a hand in setting out what's going to change, and that we're a part of that. I think that's super well said, and it's true for all technologies.
What do you, because you are in front of a ton of customers, when you're looking at that, what are you seeing as the big inhibitors that kind of get in the way of getting toward whatever that AI future is?
Yeah, so it's a good question, and at the risk of maybe pontificating a little bit, I think in all of this that's happened with Gen AI the last couple of years, there was obviously a lot of hype around it, and appropriately so. I mean, it's a big deal. And we're all trying to figure out, what does this mean for us? And everybody started experimenting, including us. We spent a lot of time and resources making sure people understood it within our organization, and that we had a standard set of tools that people could get familiar with. So then you've hopefully demystified it a little bit. And I think generally speaking, that's kind of where the market is. We've been through a couple of years of demystification. But I think right now people are looking at, like, what's the payback and the value that I'll get out of this? And that's where we are right now. And I think that takes time. The finance people get very involved. So we're spending this much, we're going to get this much. What does it mean for the organization? How do I rethink my business? You know, people often talk about an AI strategy. It's more of a sort of an updated company strategy with AI in all of it. So we're in the middle of all of that right now, and I think it's going well. I also think, Dan, your approach to AI being so focused on a business problem is extremely helpful, because people can sort of get their arms around that easier, right? So you're not trying to boil the ocean, you're dealing with a particular area. So I think it's all moving well, but we have to remember that people are at different places.
I have a follow-up question. I like this turning it around, because I like asking you questions more than you asking me questions. One thing that you touched on that we're seeing too, there was this, at least in my space, a huge overswing on the promise of AI about 7 years ago. So one of the things that we're encountering is there are a fair number of charlatans, let's say, or just over promises from people like me on the marketing side, right? And so now, like, what are you experiencing in terms of, there's a lot of skepticism, maybe is my point. What are you seeing? Like, even if it's true, people go, you have to prove it maybe in a way that you might not have had to 5 years ago.
I think you're right. It was a leading question.
It was.
You're absolutely right. I think people are, or executives, I mentioned finance earlier, very focused on, what are we going to get out of this, and when, and what's the impact on the organization, and what are the changes. People are very focused on the human element of this right now, which is great. It goes beyond education. It goes into actually rethinking, how you do business. Because if you do AI right, giant pieces of workflow basically get automated, right? And with the benefit right now of natural language. So I think all of those things, if you're a senior executive in an organization, you're thinking, this has got far-reaching impacts. I better take a little bit of time and think through carefully what it means. And my sense is that's where we are. We're certainly doing that in our firm. And I think we see our clients doing that. But one thing that is very clear is that it is going to happen, right? And it's going to happen. It's going to have profound impacts across all industries. Do I ask you a question now? Oh, okay, so
Thank you for indulging me.
oh, of course, of course. So now, I've seen your product. You have many customers who have been on things like transcription and your other productivity tools. The Gen Agent, which is a few months old, as you said, you want to get everybody onto that. How is that going with your existing customers?
It's going, it's going really well on two fronts. One, there is a huge learning that you do. For us, and this wouldn't be a surprise to anyone, the number one question that companies have relates to security, and it's really relevant. It's security in terms of the back-end APIs that one has to access. There's also I put it under the label of security, but when you're thinking about hallucinations, that is nobody wants to be on Reddit, right, for something that AI does, and we've all seen it, and it's terrifying to large enterprises. And so for us, it's been great to see. We have about 60% of our customers who are now either deploying or are the beginning stages of deploying, which is great because we start to get a lot of learning from that. And then we're seeing really great immediate improvement once we launch. We're seeing great improvement in terms of number of interactions, especially these common, we call them like tier 1 interactions, which is a lot of the stuff that comes into a contact center. We're seeing the offset, where companies are seeing immediate cost savings, which is really helpful for anybody. And then from a security standpoint, it's just getting better and better and better in terms of, we're at about 1 out of every 5,000 interactions that have some sort of hiccup, or call it broadly a hallucination, nothing bad. It's just we're an error, which is much better than human agents. So that's always a consideration. I saw something on Slack this morning where an airline customer of ours, we had a screenshot of an interaction of a malcontent who was coming into this airline on chat and asking for like 1 million frequent flyer points, and to watch the generative agent just navigate that smoothly and respectfully, and that you could see that the customer was trying to trick the AI. We've all tried to do that with ChatGPT and things like that. So to watch the elegance in which it still maintains a great poise of like, no, we're not gonna do that, but we'll say it nicely, but just watch how people are gonna try to mess with it. It's awesome to see that, because there's nothing, we have nothing without that. If we don't have that type of security and brand trust, it's not. So it's really cool to see our customers starting to adopt, and everyone's jumping in at a different pace and going, let's try this particular use case, or we'll just do it in a testing environment. And some are going, let's deploy. We're starting to see the results we want. So our customers are representing, I think, the market. Some are really aggressive, and some are going, we have a lot of internal stakeholders. We've got to get aligned to it. So I think it's great for what it is for an earlier product.
Yeah, look, it's been great working with you guys. So they're going to pull us here pretty quickly. Our 20 minutes went like that.
They can't make us get off stage.
Yeah. So I see the other group over there. So with that said, maybe if there's a final point you'd like to leave the audience with around this really fantastic set of products, especially the generative agent, with this group, what would that be, Dan?
I mean, humbly, come by the booth and have a conversation with us, and we can talk about where you're at, how we're mapping. There's a lot of questions in the conversations that I've had just in the last this morning, just around where you're at in your maturity model, how we can help. So obviously, come by. I think the biggest takeaway for me has been, nobody wants to come in and say, hey, let's replace human agents. Nobody wants to go, let's replace jobs. What we're seeing instead is the companies that are talking to us about this are having a real problem with how to get to scale and reduce cost and provide better CX for their customers. And I think there's a great balance that we have to start re-envisioning the number of agents, but also the quality of the job, so that we can keep those agents from quitting at right now about a 70% rate. And so for us, there's a passion in going, we want to be advocates for making the roles of the agents to become something that they're not today, which is why these problems are happening. So Love to have a conversation with you if we see each other. And yeah, it's really exciting times. And I appreciate the partnership and all the work that you.
It's great. It's great. It's great working with you guys. You're a great company. We learn a lot from you, and our clients benefit tremendously from the partnership together. So, thank you, Dan.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks.